Hello everybody and welcome to the 9th video in our series of videos on the age of exploration. So in today's video we are going to look at a civilization known as the Aztecs. So up until this point in our journey through history we have mainly focused on events in Ireland and Europe with some references to Africa, the Middle East and Asia as we've been going on our journey through the world in the age of exploration. But we have not talked about the Americas and the people who lived there. So, what you should get by the end of this presentation, you should know where the Aztecs lived, you should know two things about their society, and you should know why they engaged in human sacrifice. As I said, we are going to talk about the Aztecs today who lived on the continent of America. They lived more specifically in a place called Mesoamerica, which included central Mexico, Belize, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. So around the time of 1492, when Columbus arrived in America, this is where the Aztecs were. So who were they and where did they come from? So the same way as Europe had a rich history going from the Stone Age to Columbus, the people of this area we know in Mesoamerica had a rich history too. We don't know who the first people were who arrived in the Americas. There are lots of theories that have been put forward, but many have been proven to be false by recent archaeological discoveries. But what we do know is that the people of this area experienced their very own Neolithic revolution. Just like the one we talked about, you guys would have talked about way back at the beginning of your studies with the Fertile Crescent. So the main aspect of a Neolithic revolution was the invention of farming. So many of the foods that you eat today were first grown in the Americas. Maize, tomatoes, avocados, cacao, which gives us chocolate, chili, beans, the list goes on and on. So while it is hard to date these things, there is evidence that the agricultural or the Neolithic revolution happened in Mesoamerica around the same time as it happened in the Fertile Crescent, which was the first place civilization sprung up in Asia. Although some date it kind of a little bit later, about 7000 BCE, so a few thousand years later. What we do know for sure is that around the time of Columbus, there was a great civilization known as the Aztecs. We will be talking about their society in a minute, but first I'm just going to look at the history of Mesoamerica. So at the beginning, around the beginning of the Common Era, so about 2019 years ago, a small village known as TEOTIHUACÁN emerged as this military power in Mesoamerica. Their capital city had as much as 200,000 people living in it. So if you put that in comparison, ancient Rome at its height had about 1 million people living there, while at the time of Columbus, the largest city in Europe was about 115,000. So Teotihuacan was a very advanced city. But Teotihuacan fell in the 8th century, and the next people to build an empire in the area were the Toltecs, and they reigned for about 200 years from about 1000 CE to 12,000 CE. Around this time, the Aztecs moved into an area of the Toltec around Lake Texcoco. However, there were more powerful groups in the area who drove the Aztecs from the fertile land to this uninhabited island here in Lakes Texcoco, where they built their capital city of Tenochtitlan. So around 1428, the Aztecs made an alliance with two other kind of small states to overthrow those who controlled them. And this was the new Triple Alliance. And they went on and they conquered vast amounts of land. They controlled this empire by like a combination of trade and military conquest. And these trade deals and military conquests, through these things, they would dominate the other city-states and install friendly rulers in the city-states that arranged royal marriages, and they just spread their own religion. And at its height in 1519, just before they come into contact with the Europeans, it controlled over 500 city-states and over 85,000 square miles from central and south Mexico to Guatemala. So that is 885,000 square miles in less than 100 years from being stranded on this small little island in the middle of a lake. So So what did Aztec society look like? 90 years may seem like a long time to a person, but in terms of empires, it's a very short time. The Aztecs did, however, develop a very sophisticated culture. The Aztecs had what is probably the first large scale compulsory education system in history. Every male citizen of the Aztecs and their other two allies in the Triple Alliance had to attend one sort of school or another up until the age of 16. This didn't happen anywhere else in the world at the time. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor, all social classes had to attend school. There's also evidence that while males were afforded greater status than women after the Aztecs became this big military power, women still regularly held high status positions. They had jobs like doctors and priests, they were professional weavers and crafters, which at the time in Europe they were denied these kind of high status positions. So, with this education system in place, the Aztecs were beginning to develop a rich culture of discussing philosophy that unfortunately was cut short by the catastrophe that was to befall the Aztecs in Mesoamerica when the Spanish arrived. When a new empire arises, they usually need a kind of like an ideology or a philosophy that they use to justify why they have conquered these new people who are now the subjects of their new empire and have to pay taxes to them. The Aztecs were no different, and they developed this kind of intricate ideology that portrayed the Aztecs as the keepers of this kind of cosmic order. And the sacred mission of the Aztecs was to furnish the sun god and god of war, Huitzilopochtli, with a vital kind of re-energizing substance to help him postpone the death of everyone on the planet. It sounds pretty heavy, but that's what they believed. And there was only one way of getting this life energy for their sun god, and that was through ritual human sacrifice. Many people point to human sacrifice as something that proves the barbarity of the Aztecs. People are horrified about crowds kind of assembling to watch people being put to death. But the same thing was happening all over Europe at the time, but in a different form. People in Europe would flock to public executions, and these executions could be quite horrific, but people saw it as a free form of entertainment. The people who were executed in Europe were executed to show what would happen if you broke the king's laws. So the European executions or sacrifices kept order in the country, while the Aztecs believed that their sacrifices also kept a kind of order, this cosmic order as well. Like, this is not to condone human sacrifice, but just to point out that it would be hypocritical to call the Aztec barbarian in this ritual when Europeans had kind of a similar ritual. So that brings us to the end of our presentation on the Aztecs. By now you should know where the Aztecs lived, so you should know that they lived in Mesoamerica. You could bring that down further to them being on the island of Tenochtitlan in Lake Texcoco. You should know two things about their society, so that they were a warrior society, that they had made all young kids under the age of 16 attend school, that women were given high status positions. And you should know why they engaged in human sacrifice. They believed that the blood or the life energy of those who were sacrificed would help maintain a cosmic order. Thanks for watching the presentation. Hope you got something good from it.